Well, Mr. Griggs, how are we doing this week?
Well, I don't know. There's just more things to bitch about. The spring broke on my garage door, and my wife's car was trapped in the garage. So we had to use the truck to get Zoe to her allergy shots. But that's all fixed. What else happened? Well, I don't know. Everything's breaking. I'm breaking, whatever.
Well, can you get around all that and be in a better mood this week?
Oh, I'm always in a good mood. Except,
I tried to get you to laugh last week and I failed miserably. And I'm known as a pretty witty guy.
yeah, but see, this week it's Afghanistan, which really
Yeah.
pisses me off because it's like Vietnam deja vu. And, the issue becomes, should we have pulled out a long time ago, in which case you blame it on Obama? Or should Bush have gone on mission completed and ended it right then and there? I tend to go towards the latter, but I think part of the problem is, and I don't know what goes on between the Joint Chiefs and the president, but military people don't, aside from the War College at Carlisle and Leavenworth, Command and General Staff, they don't really get into political issues, and war is a political issue. I mean, is that your phone?
Yeah, you want to,
Okay, well, as I was saying until I was so rudely interrupted,
I'm sorry I can't.
well, I know you're sorry, but that's okay.
No, it's,
They don't seem to have I guess the Germans would call it geopolitics. The Germans have a view on things like this. And a German friend of mine has had 5 tours in Afghanistan, and he basically says that they're a 15th century country that's not going to pull out of it. So don't try and pull a Jimmy Carter and try and save the world. And I think that's where our mistake was. In Vietnam, we should have learned from the French. We didn't. Afghanistan, we should have learned from the Russians. We didn't. And now it gets, it's history repeating itself. And it really kind of irritates the hell out of me.
well, I agree with everything you just said. I'm both disappointed and mystified that we would conduct a 20-year war and lose. And we certainly lost, because in a matter of days, the Taliban is moving into the capitals. By latest count, 10 of approximately, I think it's 33 provinces. And it's very similar to the Viet Cong takeover in Vietnam. As you and I talked prior to the call starting, I remember full well the helicopters on the roof of the American embassy in Saigon, and aircraft and helicopters being pushed over the sides of aircraft carriers. And I mean, to me, it was such a debacle at the end. And you think of all the lives lost, and what a way to conduct American foreign policy. And this, in many respects, is worse, because it went on and on and on and on. I mean, what was this, the Punic Wars? If we weren't there to win, or determined early on that we couldn't, then don't lie to the American people, just get the hell out.
I would agree with that, but I would also say that nobody wins a war. But the odd thing is, Vietnam has actually turned into quite a progressive socialist country. You know, they went through rough times, but you know, right now it's a great place for tourists. It's incredible. My wife's cousin lives in Vietnam. Several others live in Vietnam, and I mean they're like living the good life. Things are going surprisingly well. Will that happen? Will that happen in a place like Afghanistan? Probably never.
Oh, the things you lay on me. I I know people I worked with that vacationed in Vietnam and said very much the same thing you just said. But if I were in a family that lost uh, soldiers in the Vietnam War or had soldiers who came back maimed, I could give a rat's butt if things are copacetic in South Vietnam now. You know, then why were we there? There's long been uh, and I don't know if it's was based in any kind of fact or just speculation that John F. Kennedy, in a second term, had he lived, would have gotten us out of Vietnam. But the fact is that, neither he did, uh, nor did LBJ until the bitter end. And the precursor of direct involvement was even President Eisenhower, who put advisors in. And Kennedy, I'm told, was scared to death that if he didn't continue the policy of supporting the South Vietnamese, that he would have looked weak. He already looked weak due to the Bay of Pigs fiasco. And now, in terms of Afghanistan, we can't blame one party. I'm the first to say it's both parties, but I asked the question out loud, and I'm not asking you as if you would necessarily know this, Dick, but where's the CIA, the National Security Council, the people who advise multiple presidents? Did not anyone say this thing's a loser? It's not going to be a winner, and we're going to lose lives and treasure and surely reputation in a war that we can't win. And then lastly, my last comment would be, just because I enjoy reading military history, I asked myself if the people that won World War II were alive today, could they have won in Afghanistan? And I don't know. I don't know if they could accomplish that, but the political leaders would take their legs out from under them. I don't know. But I just know, to me, it's a egregious humiliation for America and American foreign policy.
Well, your point is interesting because would they have changed the course of history? The Greatest Generation? Don't know. It's really, the combat was different. Everything was different, and basically we bombed Germany back into the Stone Age. And that's something that we never did in Afghanistan or even Vietnam, contrary to what you may hear about B-52 runs and whatever. So, really can't answer that question. But the question still becomes, if there isn't an agreement on what the outcome is supposed to be, you'll never achieve it.
Well, I pity the people there who can't get out. there's going to be a slaughter, just as there was in Vietnam. And,
Yeah.
it's terrible to contemplate. And to what extent, I don't think it's solely on us, but I think we're part of the root cause of what will ensue now. So I was not in disfavor of getting out of Afghanistan. I mean, when Trump was in office, but I certainly don't like the fact that we, Biden announced to the world when the troops would be coming home. And now, if the press is reporting correctly, and I don't trust the American press, but we're told that 3,000 troops have been sent back to Afghanistan to get US civilians out and diplomatic personnel. And I'm sure there are probably, some CIA people there. I have no doubt that, we're not going to hear about that. But it just seems like the whole thing is being bungled. And if you juxtapose that with everything else going wrong in this country right now, and we've talked about that pretty much every week, it's just, I think of the song, Another Brick in the Wall. It's such a low point for the country. And how does an administration take it down in a matter of months? It's incredible. And we would need hours on a podcast to enumerate all of the things that are going wrong now.
Well, it's interesting because one of the first things that hit me this morning when I was watching about the drawdown, it says they have to take 4,000 people out of the embassy. I'm going, what the hell were these 4,000 people doing?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing is a comedy of errors. Oh, speaking of which, I saw the greatest movie last night. 1922 silent movie, Prisoner of Zenda.
Now there was a segue.
No, but it was really, really, really great. So that was the high point of my week. Getting back to Afghanistan, though, Millie's comment was, well, what do they do there? I said, well, they make rugs. They do opiates. I'm not really sure what else they do.
I think the number one mode of transportation in Afghanistan is to follow the mountain goat pass.
Well, I was going to ask you about that since you're into rescuing animals. Don't you have a camel or something from Afghanistan?
No.
But no, switching back to that, the real question becomes, and Americans need to really think about it, is what benefit do I get? Remember, my famous question is, what do I get? What do I get out of Afghanistan? I'm not into rugs, so I don't really know.
Well, I do recall that, and again, I've already made the statement that this is a product of Republican and Democrat administrations, but I do recall that Obama had an opportunity to take out Osama bin Laden early on and didn't. And wasn't that the real goal of going into Afghanistan, to find that son of a bitch and to kill him? But we've screwed around for 20 years and we've gone well past the troops taking out Osama bin Laden. So it just makes you wonder. I hate to be cynical, But you're ex-military. I mean, does the military prefer war because that's how people get promoted? I
Well, I would say in some respects, yes. You know, if you don't have a combat tour, you don't get promoted, period. That's just the way it is. Is that right, wrong, you know, whatever? You know, hell, Eisenhower was probably the most inexperienced person they ever could have selected for Supreme Allied Commander. But he had enough political savvy and everything to, you know, make things work. You know,
I remember Douglas, to your point, I remember Douglas MacArthur's famous quote about Eisenhower. He said, the best clerk I ever had.
yeah, yeah. But, you know, there's enough blame to go around. My only concern is, and, you know, it's actually a positive pat on the back to Biden. You know, America's back in the game. You know, we can't live in our own little world. We can't go to pre-World War II where we're not going to get involved. And, you know, we really have to look at what the payoff is, cost-benefit analysis. And I'm not sure that was ever done. You know, the military figures we can take on the world and we can win. Well, it doesn't work that way. History has proven it doesn't work that way.
How is Biden back in the game?
Well, you know, he's making friends with NATO again. You know,
Oh, are you serious, Dick?
no, I am serious.
Making friends? I mean, so is the corollary that Trump made enemies? Trump got the NATO upset because Trump said, we're not going to provide the defense and subsidize all of you guys. You're going to start paying up.
Well, to answer your question, yes.
Well, we have a difference of opinion, but that's okay.
Well, no. The point I'm trying to make is, you know, what's the term? There's a term. Those that play together, stick together, whatever, you know, I don't know. You know, we set ourselves up with the Marshall Plan and the rebuilding of Japan and everything where we were going to save the whole world. And to some, I think probably accurately, we probably did. But, you know, if you look at, and lately I'm really into Japanese history and those types of things, American Caesar, you know, you name it. Times have changed. You know, we set ourselves up. We wanted to be the leaders of the free world, but we've never really acted like the leaders of the free world. We've tried to pull a Jimmy Carter on everybody, turn everybody into a happy Baptist.
Well, I think that was true of the Bush presidencies as well. But, you know, you really threw me a curveball in saying Biden's got us back in the game. I saw a video this past week, the Secret Serviceman walking ahead of Joe Biden on his return to the White House kept pointing his finger down at the sidewalk, and Biden couldn't even stay on the sidewalk. And then he got lost in the bushes and then emerged from the bushes. This is all on videotape. I'm not making this up. The guy's addled. I look at what's happened in Afghanistan. And by the way, if Trump was still in office, and Trump was going to pull the troops out of Afghanistan, but if it had been bungled in this fashion, this would be 24/7 cable news beat up Trump again, as they did on each and every, you know, Trump couldn't get out of bed in the morning without getting beaten up. Biden, he buys ice cream and goes home to Delaware all the time. I mean, the guy, what? I don't know if this is germane to what we were talking about, but your China or your Russia are two major enemies. And you look at what's happened in Afghanistan, clearly a loss, uh, clearly a bungled retreat, if maybe that's the right word for what we're doing.
Oh, no, they're no longer called retreats. They're called retrogrades.
Okay, a retrograde that wasn't done well, and the commander in chief of the United States of America has lost his marbles or most of his marbles, and geez, what does that hold in store? And we have an American military more concerned about issues of wokeness. It seems I'm probably being unfair here. Then getting down to the brass tacks of preparing a military that can win. I mean, you look at the buildup in the of the Chinese Navy as an example. That should be a huge concern.
Okay, but you just brought up an interesting point, and that is to win. How the hell, A, do you win a war? Because you don't. You basically, everybody loses. And number two, what would victory look like?
Well, I don't know. I guess the that's a good question. The key issue that in terms of what it would look like is whether or not the nuclear arsenals would be used. And obviously, for that to happen, nobody would win. But I don't think the statement that nobody wins in a war is necessarily accurate. Had we not gone to war against Hitler, what would the world have looked like after he invaded Europe? Had he been successful in Great Britain, for lack of the US entering the war? What Asia would be today? You love Japan, and you know what I'm about to say, but I think a lot of people, particularly young people, are clueless. Douglas MacArthur wrote the Constitution for Japan. Japan today is a democracy, and it's largely due to, in effect, tell me if you think I'm wrong here, Douglas MacArthur was the founding father of Japanese democracy, similar to what the founding fathers, plural, did for our own country in writing a constitution.
I would agree, but the difference is, again, it's a cultural issue. You've got the Emperor of Japan, you've got the subservient population, the way things used to be. And if we hadn't gone in with unlimited power and resculpted the landscape, God knows what would have happened. And I think that was one of MacArthur's greatest actions. The fact that he knew that. See, it's like Patton, who grew up in Europe when his father was ambassador. The world's just a different place. And to assume that you can superimpose all this, talking about victory in Europe, I mean, basically, we leveled Europe, just like we leveled Japan.
Well, we leveled two cities in Japan. But I'll totally agree with your statement about Europe.
No, because we leveled most of Tokyo, almost all the industrial areas, they were leveled. They were bombed into oblivion. And then that's why a lot of people would say that dropping atomic bombs were kind of, adding whatever to the pie. But, I don't know.
Well, I don't know if we're getting off into the weeds, but I think most people believe that, unless you're a crazy liberal, that dropping the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki probably saved at least 1 million American lives, meaning our military.
I would agree.
There would have been horrendous costs had we had to invade Japan as we did Normandy.
Yeah. I just wish that I was able to ask my dad why he hated Truman so much. Was it because he fired MacArthur? I don't know.
I don't know. I think Truman was, in terms of things, a second fiddle, became president of the United States. He wasn't even aware of the atomic bomb being developed until he became president. And the things thrown at him, I think on the whole, Truman did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Unlike recent presidents, the country's just so different now. We've talked about this at length, but again, we're both 74, born in 1947, probably became conscious of things going on in the world, probably, 1952, 53, 54. I mean, people may think that remark's silly, as we would have only been 5, 6 years old, but I swear to you, I remember the Adlai Stevenson running against Ike in the 52 political conventions. I remember it, and I've always loved politics. But everything to me made more sense back then. I hearken back to the Kennedy-Nixon debates. And if any young people ever, take the time to listen to this podcast, and I doubt that happens because the attention spans in this day and age are no longer than a Twitter reply or a text message. But those were excellent debates, and they were civil to one another, and they both were keenly intelligent and made their points, and they came at issues in most regards differently. But I think you could make a choice, and you could take a lot of the emotion and needless bickering that we see today out of the equation in deciding who to vote for. And nowadays, it's just slash and burn. And we don't take anything seriously. I don't think there'll be a postmortem done on Afghanistan because we're too worried about coming up with 42 pronouns for what people aren't instead of what they really are, either a man or a woman.
You just opened it up because you got 3 more minutes. But what do you think about the new census?
Well, it doesn't come as a surprise. No, I don't have a problem with a multicultural society as much as I do an open borders policy. If you come to the country through normal immigration channels, we're all the descendants of immigrants. So that's fine. I find it a curiosity. The white, they call it the white non-Hispanic population. What did the article say, Dick? Is it lost 6%, 7%
Yes,
since the last census, excuse me? So we're something around 53, 54% in the country. Guys like you and I, people like you and I, Caucasians. But I sit night after night after night after night, and on television, virtually 90% plus of all television commercials now are Black people. Now, more power to them that they're getting good jobs and they're making commercials. They probably sat on their couches 20 years ago and said, geez, I'd never see a Black person on a commercial. But talk about a pendulum swing. But this open borders policy, we don't have time now, apparently, but
no, I'm going to have to cut you off until next week.